Here's a story that I think you'll enjoy. It comes from medieval England in the 1300s, and it's a story about a tower. No, not one of those flashy towers with lots of windows and fancy architecture, but a plain old watchtower that stood guard along the English coast. This tower had seen better days. Its paint was peeling, its stones were crumbling, and its roof was barely holding on. But it had a purpose, a duty to stand against the darkness. For this was no ordinary tower. It was a beacon of hope in a world full of danger. See, back in the Middle Ages, the seas were a wild and unpredictable place. Storms could appear out of nowhere, tossing ships like toys in the waves and claiming lives without mercy. And then there were the enemies who lurked in the shadows, ready to strike when you least expected it. The people who lived near the coast knew these dangers all too well. And so, they built towers like this one to watch over them. These towers weren't just for defense, though. They were also used to guide ships safely into port and to warn the townspeople of any approaching danger. One day a storm was brewing on the horizon. The wind was howling, the rain was pouring, and the waves were crashing against the shore. The brave message climbed to the top of the tower and raised the alarm. "Beware the storm," he shouted, his voice echoing over the waves. "Beware the storm." The townspeople heard his warning and rushed to take cover. They battened down the hatches, they anchored their boats, and they held on tight to their loved ones. The brave messenger watched as the storm approached, his heart pounding in his chest. He knew that this was no ordinary storm. This was a monster of a storm, the likes of which he had never seen before. The wind began to scream, tearing at the messenger's clothes and whipping his hair across his face. The rain came down in torrents, blurring his vision and soaking him to the bone. But the messenger stood his ground. He raised his voice above the din of the storm and shouted, "Beware the storm, beware the storm." As the storm raged on, the messenger's voice grew hoarse and his body grew weary, but he did not falter. He knew that the safety of the town depended on him. He was the last line of defense between the people and the raging sea. Suddenly, the messenger saw something in the distance. A ship, caught in the storm, was being tossed around like a leaf in a whirlwind. The ship was close to shore now, and the lives of its crew were hanging in the balance. The messenger raced down the tower and sprinted along the beach. He flagged down a group of men who were trying to secure their boats and shouted, "We need help! We need help!" The men looked out to sea and saw the struggling ship. Without hesitation, they dropped everything and ran to the rescue. The messenger joined them, his heart pounding with adrenaline. Together, they pulled the ship's crew from the wreckage and dragged them onto the shore. The townspeople cheered, grateful for their bravery in the face of such danger. But the messenger knew that there was still work to be done. He turned back to the raging sea and raised his voice once more. "Beware the storm," he shouted. "Beware the storm." The messenger continued his vigil, watching over the town and guiding any lost souls to safety. As the sun began to set, the storm finally began to subside. The wind died down, the rain slowed to a drizzle, and the clouds parted to reveal a sliver of moon. Exhausted but satisfied, the messenger climbed down the tower and made his way home. He had done his duty, and the town was safe. But as he walked through the quiet streets, he couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. The next morning, the townspeople gathered in the square to discuss what had happened during the storm. Many had lost loved ones or property during the storm, but they were grateful to be alive. They praised the messenger's bravery and thanked him for saving so many lives. But then a terrible realization dawned on them. The ship that had been wrecked was not an enemy vessel, but a merchant ship carrying valuable goods to the town. The townspeople's anger turned to outrage as they realized that they had been attacked by their own. In a fit of rage, they stormed the messenger's house and dragged him into the square. They accused him of murder and treason and demanded that he be punished. The messenger tried to explain that he had only been trying to help, but the townspeople would not listen. They were too angry, too blinded by their own pain and suffering. The messenger was thrown into a dungeon, his cries for mercy ignored. Days turned into weeks, and the messenger's hope began to dwindle. He was innocent, but he knew that no one would believe him. He was trapped in a nightmare of his own making. Then one day a young girl who had witnessed the storm from her window came forward. She told the townspeople about the ship in distress and how the messenger had saved so many lives. She spoke of his bravery and his kindness, and how he had put himself in danger to protect others. The townspeople were ashamed. They realized that they had made a terrible mistake. The messenger was not a traitor. He was a hero. They rushed to his cell and apologized for what they had done. They released him and showered him with gratitude and gifts. The messenger, though still shaken by his ordeal, knew that he had done the right thing. He had saved lives and protected his town, and that was all that mattered. From that day on, the messenger was known throughout the land as the brave messenger of the tower. His story was passed down through generations, inspiring young people to be kind, brave, and true. And as for the tower, it continued to stand guard along the coast, a silent witness to the bravery of one man who dared to stand against the darkness. Thank you for listening to the story of the brave message. If you enjoyed this tale, please don't forget to leave a like and subscribe for more medieval adventures. Till next time, farewell.